Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Friday evening. It is also 9 o'clock. Time for a live stream. But first, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all cozy, comfy, safe, and well. And we have Eke. I haven't got William yet. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, doing well. Cheers, buddy.
Good. I'm sorry to inform all of you, but we're going to have a couple of absentees tonight. I have received an email from Sensum explaining that due to family and work commitments this weekend, he's had to cancel all his appearances. So not only he won't be here tonight, but he'll also not be with Bonnie Lad or Toffee. So those shows are also, well, his part in those shows are also cancelled. So tonight, Eke and my own son Samuel will not be here tonight either. So it's going to be the three of us, Eke, William, and myself, to do the review. but I'm sure we'll cope. I'm sure we'll manage. There's William now. Good lad. Good evening, William.
Well, well, well.
Whoa, that's loud.
Good.
You got a reverb on that.
I don't know, I'm in a different room, so
Oh,
maybe
that's
that.
yeah. It sounds as though you've got a little reverb on your voice, but it's okay.
I've been summoned into the kitchen tonight
Oh, right. Oh,
by the boss.
the boss has spoken.
Yeah, so, hey, what can I do? A joy to be back.
Good. That's good. Well, I take it you heard me say that Samuel will not be here tonight, and Sensen will not be here tonight.
Yeah, I did. Sensum did mention the other day that he was going to be busy. Shocking, man. I think we need to deduct points from his table.
Excellent. Yep. Um, well, I'm sure we can struggle on, folks. I'm sure we'll manage. So this is interesting to be back on. But there you go. I forgot to. No, I didn't actually. I was going to say I forgot to put on my background, but I have put it on. It's just that I was not used to seeing the library behind me. We'll stick to the library. Anyway, anything new with yourself, William?
Not really. Just still at college, still going, still trying my best, basically. It's quite tough. It's got harder. I feel like I'm getting assessments thrown at me every second day. but I reckon I'll get there. I knew
Good
it
man.
would be a step up from the level 6 going into the HNC. And
Oh, you've made that change, have you?
yeah. And
Right.
last week, was it last week? No, on Tuesday, we were getting deep into the whole Agenda 2030 sustainable development goals. So that was quite hard. It was a hard graft, that one.
I'll bet it was. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough to do that as well because you want to put your views across, and
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to keep it as calm and as positive as possible, but yeah, I did put quite a bit of my views across in the way that, and to be fair, some people agreed in the way that on paper and on the face of it, a lot of it seems quite good and what have you, but when you break it down and get into the roots and a bit more
Uh,
complicated side of it, a lot of it can't work. None of it,
no.
most of it can't work, and not in the world that we're in,
No.
which in my own view is like a capitalist. Well, it is. It's a capitalist world driven by consumption.
True. How about you, Eki? Anything new in your world that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so I got into some kind of a weird scrap with the local drug cartels, and it turned into a bit of a thing. And unfortunately, there are a couple of court cases that are coming up. So it's a little awkward having to explain to my family what I'm doing during the day when I never, like, I can't tell them what's actually going on. So it's led to some very awkward conversations. I'm joking, none of that's true, but it'd be a great premise for a movie.
I was wondering. You're a careful man. So it'd be very unusual for you to get yourself caught up in such a nonsense.
Well, as it turns out, here in California, there actually is a lot of cartel business, but a lot of the grow sites, um, they are in counties that are like, they're not Los Angeles County. They're just way out there. But I've been keeping track of what's going on, and it's interesting. It's actually quite interesting. Every so often, I think about going out and just like video recording the. They're not streets; they're dirt roads. But you can actually go out. You can find these places. The only issue with it is they're really, really territorial. So if you go out there
Mm,
and they decide that they don't want you around, they'll make it very clear. And
sure,
sometimes that's not a good thing.
exactly. You need to be careful. We don't want anything to happen to our Eki.
Yeah, well, anyhow, now, basically, my life is also much like Williams. I just kind of hang out, and that's about it.
Mm. Oh, by the way, just in case you missed it or had forgotten, I'll make the announcement one more time. We managed to raise, the party and yourselves managed to raise £110 for the food bank, and they were overjoyed with that, especially when it was given to them in the form of cash. They really appreciated that because too often they said exactly what I had suspected. People bring meaning, they're well meaning people, they bring things, but quite often they get inundated by one particular item and end up they've got too much of it. So the cash, I always thought, gave them the opportunity to spend it how it was really needed, and that's what they said. So well done to everyone who helped raise £110. Really appreciated by the folks down in West Stewart Street. So there you go. If you hadn't heard it before, there it is. I've also got a connection lined up. I haven't yet met this person, but through my sister, the connection has been made with someone in the town who's got a possibility of premises to hold this year's uh, chess tournament. I haven't done anything about it yet. I'm holding back for private reasons of health. Once I get word from the doctors about what the next step is for me health wise, I will then be in a better position to move forward with the chess tournament. But I thought I'd let you know that I've already got someone who already promotes chess in his own way and is very keen on the idea of the tournament and prize money, etc. So I'll let you know how that goes as it moves forward. So we're doing well, folks. We're doing well. Anyway, let's get started on the movie review, shall we? As it was you that chose this, William, we'll start with you. Give me a short answer or explanation, if you'll prefer, as to why you chose this particular film.
Yeah. Um, I think first of all, before I mention that, that's a great amount to raise that you raised for the food bank.
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic. So well done, John. I'm sure they would have been pleased, and it would have went to people who they genuinely need it. And there's
Uh-huh.
a lot of these people now. Unfortunately, I
Too
mean,
many.
I think yeah, there's food banks everywhere now. Whereas if you go back maybe say 10 years, hardly any. You wouldn't see any, and now
No.
they're everywhere. So many people they are reliant on them as well. Not only just people who, let's say, they're unemployed, even people who are in employment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely staggering where we're at, but yeah, I think that's great. So well done to everybody and to yourself, John. Fantastic. But yeah, I picked it mainly because I'd heard so much about it, seen different clips over the years, but I had never actually watched it in full,
Yeah.
the whole lot, and I didn't realize it was over 2 hours either. So I thought, oh, great, here we go. And yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll get into it, but because I hadn't seen it, I thought I would give it a try.
Okay. I take it you have seen this film, Eke, 2001.
Yes, once or twice.
So, what's your opening thoughts for the movie?
Mm, my favorite description of it is from Kubrick himself. He was tasked with making a propaganda film by the government, and instead he gave them a religious film. And I think that accurately describes the movie in a lot of ways.
Okay. I suppose that there's only three of us. I'll have to contribute a bit more than I usually do. uh, well, I saw this in the cinema. I'm old enough to be able to say that I saw this on its first general release throughout the country. So I saw this in a cinema by the name of the Coliseum in Glasgow. One afternoon, uh, a friend of mine, a fellow called Billy Bradley, he and I went one afternoon to see this. There was three of us in the cinema that day, and the projectionist very kindly racked up the sound. So, so at times the seat was kind of shaking. uh, but my overall thoughts is I was not impressed by the film. I was impressed by the visuals, impressed by the soundtrack, especially the movie, the music. Uh, but as an entirety, as a film, I was never hot under the collar about it, as some people became ultimately. Um, I think it's a movie of three parts, uh, and I think the weakest part's the last part, but we'll get there about it. So that's my opening remarks about the movie. Well made, but I don't have it in my collection. Put it that way. I never even thought about buying it. And just out of curiosity, when they made the 2003 film, I know it wasn't Kubrick, but I watched it. I hired it from a shop. I watched it just out of curiosity. But we could talk about that later as well if you want. So I'll get back to you, William. What do you think is the key theme of that film? Do you think there's a key theme, or is there a theme at all?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, that is a very good question. I suppose that for me, it kind of the theme would kind of be space itself. Although it's hard to nail down a theme. I've seen a lot of people call it not only a film but an experience, and I think for me it was probably a wee bit. I would go beyond that and call it. There's two words that I would call it, and it's an encounter and an endurance. And it's probably one of the strangest films that I've ever watched. And I can understand why people didn't like it and thought, what the hell is this? And I think if you look at the trivia, a lot of people walked out in the first kind of screenings of it. They were like, nah, I'm not watching this. And then I think it done quite bad originally as well. And it got to a point where MGM were going to pull it. But then a lot of the theatres were saying, well, actually, it's picking up on numbers. But it wasn't really because the movie was great. It was because the whole psychedelic drug scene had picked up on it. And,
Right.
and more young people were coming in to watch, obviously, the new,
I have to
the
sit and
kind of,
watch the ending.
yeah, basically, yeah. So they would have had to suffer the beginning and get to the psychedelic part, and you could probably see why they done that. So I think on the back of that, it began to do well, and now it's kind of looked at as a classic, and
Yeah, I know.
some people have even called it the greatest film of all time.
Oh,
But
for God's sake, no.
yeah, I don't think I'd go that far, to be
Oh,
fair.
gosh, no. Absolutely not.
But for me, the two words that came to mind were an endurance and an encounter. That's how I would describe it.
Okay. Okay, how about yourself? Do you think, or you've already indicated about themes. So let me just corner you on that. What, for you, is the main theme of that movie, if there is one?
I'm going to crib a little bit off of Rob Ager. You guys know Rob Ager. Does anyone know of that guy, Rob Ager?
Don't know.
Ah, fair enough. Yeah, he's one of these YouTubers with a channel that talks about movies and so on. Uh, he's um, he's British and he's basically a libertarian or something. His he's basically a secular man, so he does not hold many of the views that I hold. However, he had this one analysis of 2001 that makes some sense to me, which is that the the theme, his opinion is that the theme of the movie is communication, and I do think there is something to that. I have this concept in my own head that the majority of high concept, especially sci-fi and horror movies, are crypto religious movies, frequently involving Genesis, like Genesis tales, like the foundations of our own people or something, whoever those people are, probably the writers and producers. And with 2001 Space Odyssey, it occurs to me that the idea that communication features heavily is probably where the theme lies. Like, consider for a moment that parts one, two, and three. Part one is the monkey scenes, and part one culminates in the monkeys seeing the monolith. And when they see the monolith, they go from being ignorant to having knowledge. This is a Gnostic concept, Gnosis, knowledge.
Mm, sure.
And with part two, that's the moon sequence. Something very similar happens. They encounter the monolith, a different monolith, and they are imparted with some kind of knowledge, which is about still a third monolith, which goes into sequence three. And in sequence three, the because there's no consistent protagonist through the entire movie. It's different protagonists. And in the third one, he reaches the monolith and then goes through some kind of a stargate or something. And again, there is a transference of something. There's a passage of some kind. And he comes out reborn as a, quote, star child, end quote. So you end up with a movement from ignorance to knowledge, and that knowledge results in something new coming out on a mental level. To me, this does suggest communication. It does suggest um, idea transfer. And I think that on a pure abstract level, that's probably what Kubrick was going for. I mean, that sounds really like out there and woolly headed. I know how crazy that sounds. I'm just saying that's my actual opinion.
Oh, well.
Because if you look at some of the other, if you look at some of the more recent movies that were put together by major Hollywood studios, uh, where the directors and writers happened to be of the same ethne as Stanley Kubrick,
Uh-huh.
you'll notice that there are deep religious themes within them. One of my favorite examples is Hereditary 2018. I don't know if anyone has seen that. Have you seen that, John?
No. No.
Okay, yeah. You're not missing much. I'll give you the long and
Yeah.
the short of it. I'll give you the Reader's Digest just so that you understand what I'm talking about. Um, Basically, it's a horror movie in which a young man has a younger sister who is supposed to be a vessel for some weird demon king or something, and the sister ends up dying, and so instead of the sister being the intended receptacle for the demon king, it gets moved over to the brother, the main character, the protagonist of the movie,
Uh-huh.
and it ends with the transference of the demon king into his body. And it's supposed to be really, it was the big horror movie of 2018 or something.
Okay.
And if you actually go through and look at what was actually talked about and described in the movie, it's not made up. They're talking about real things. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of sand in the eye. There's some red herrings here and there, but it actually is. It's a crypto religious movie, and it's my opinion. Again, the movie Hereditary. I bring that up because the writer and director of that movie was of the same ethnic background as Stanley Kubrick. That's why I bring that up.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
with 2001 Space Odyssey, Kubrick, say what you will, he was a very intelligent guy. And when he made a movie, he was embedding themes and concepts within it. And it's my opinion that the theme and concept embedded within 2001 Space Odyssey was the idea of transmission of information, communication. And it's my opinion that it's a sort of highly abstract cryptogenesis tale. Where did we come from? How did we happen? We happened because we were empty vessels, and then something was transmitted to us. This information. I. That's my take on it. Call me whatever you want. I will freely admit I
I'll
know how
call you
crazy that
Eki. How
sounds.
about that?
What's that?
I'll call you Eki.
Okay, fair enough. Anyhow, that's
That's your take
sorry
on it.
about the rambling rant, but that's my two
Well,
cents on it.
Budgie is also taking that type of viewpoint. He's saying, in his view, I would say the theme is evolutionary awakening, which is I would argue that that's essentially the same thing. The idea that something was imparted into the apes uh, to move them a step forward into brutality, but it's the beginning of tools and weapons, and then you get the same idea when we get to the moon. So there is this evolution of humankind uh, from these 2 points, from the very beginnings to the moon and then beyond. Uh, and what comes beyond is, well, to me, it seemed to be suggesting the circular nature of life and death. simply. People die, they're born, then other people are born, they live, experience, and die, and move on. But the moving on parts are the bits that are left hanging there. There's no real resolution as to where we move on to as far as Kubrick's concerned. And there's no really, I would say, there's no real suggestion about where any kind of knowledge comes from at the infant stage either. But I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to create this biblical Genesis story, uh, and putting forward these other ideas, these more, how can I put it? I suppose for a lot of people, more acceptable ideas about how things got started, rather than simply we were made in God's image, etc.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning Kubrick was an atheist. He did not believe in the afterlife. He did not believe in souls or spirits. So he's going to come at it from a materialistic standpoint.
Sure.
And this ties into elements of concepts that his ethnic group have a tendency to focus on, which is the idea of a receptacle for spirit. Again, coming back to Hereditary 2018, it was all about a spirit inhabiting a receptacle. Imagine for a moment that spirit and information are synonymous.
Okay.
If you imagine that spirit and information are synonymous, then what you end up with is, in 2018's movie Hereditary, a spirit inhabited a vessel. In 2001 Space Odyssey, information inhabited a vessel. It was a monkey. So you still end up with a form of possession in both cases. The receptacle is the same. It's a human body.
Uh-huh.
So I think that
Difference is that there's no suggestion from Kubrick as to where this comes from.
correct.
It
This
just
is one of
comes.
the
It's
peculiar.
symbolised by the monolith,
Yes,
but that doesn't really tell us anything either.
yes. Uh, it was supposed to revolve around like space aliens or something,
Yeah.
and there was an active decision, a conscious decision on the part of Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke that instead of showing aliens, they would just represent um, an advanced species by implication.
Uh-huh.
So they never actually show an alien at any point. The only thing
No,
they
no.
do is show like footprints of an alien, and that's really about it. And this is one of the problems with the secular people within Kubrick's ethne.
Uh, oh,
They
they've got a real
do.
problem.
What's that?
They have a real problem when they're trying to take on that kind of material.
Yes, yes, because they still have the overall view that they are special and unique, but there has to be something about them that is special and unique. And they can't, the ones who are secular cannot invoke God because
No,
they don't believe in God. And yet they are still
somehow
inculcated within
special.
a culture of uh, being super unique and special. So a person who is secular, a-religious, atheistic, the best they can do is uh, we're special because space aliens made us more special than the rest of you guys. That's the best you're gonna get, and I think that's probably what Kubrick was like ham-fistedly going for, sort of.
Well, in my view, I don't know if you would agree with me here. To me, that's incredibly weak and ham-fisted. to take that kind of view. The
Well, I
reason
mean,
the reason I'm a human being and I have what I have is aliens did this. I mean, that's just. But you can then that's it just goes back, it regresses forever. You can say, well, how did the aliens get to be the way they are? What gave them their special qualities?
okay, but you're
You see my
you're
point?
think. Go on, go on. I'm sorry.
The idea is that if that sort of thing was in Kubrick's mind, uh, aliens implanted something in the apes to get us going, so to speak. But the aliens themselves had to have it from somewhere, right, as well. And if you've still got to keep going out of it, then where did their special qualities come from? The aliens. Well, they got it from other aliens, and it just regresses backwards all the time, on and on and on and on.
Yeah,
There's
infinite
no real
regress.
answer, really.
It's infinite regress.
Yeah. So for me, somebody like me, I find that very uh, unsatisfactory, Eke, for me. If I find that in the film, I would find that very unsatisfactory in terms of storytelling. I'm looking for more than that,
Yeah, but you're coming at it from a very different mentality.
of course.
So, like, I understand where you're coming from, and I've had similar thoughts myself. Considering the origins of life itself,
Yeah,
like a bunch of inanimate material just suddenly, spontaneously organizing itself into uh, replicating chromosomes and RNA and DNA. It's like, that's insane. That's not going to happen. These things
no,
don't happen by accident.
no,
And all of these Kubrick like movies, they don't take that into account. The only thing that they're talking about is they start with the assumption that life already exists and that we are empty vessels, and what is imparted into the empty vessels that makes us human.
yeah,
And so they're starting at like step 3 or 4, and what you're talking about is steps 1 and 2.
exactly.
Yeah, so you're coming at it from a totally different standpoint, utterly different standpoint.
Absolutely. It's the same thing. What's the other one? Uh, it'll come to me. Uh, the idea that we were created by something else, the great engineers, uh, the Alien movie, I suppose, in its final.
Yeah, that's Prometheus 2012 by Ridley Scott.
Yeah, well, it's the same idea. The alien of some sort came here and kick-started it all off. Okay, he's got a wee tube of stuff that he brings with him, and that's what does it. But the principle's the same. But it doesn't answer anything. It doesn't satisfy anything. If you see what I'm saying, it doesn't satisfy me, for example. It doesn't satisfy up here.
There's an epiphany that I had about 5 to 7 years ago. I realized one day that the only difference between sci-fi movies and fantasy movies is that with a sci-fi movie, they try to come up with a logical, scientific explanation for magic, as where with a fantasy movie, they're just like, don't care, it's magic, we're done.
Sure.
And with the engineer concept, on a basic level, they're still talking about a miracle. The only thing they're trying to do is put a bullcrap scientifical nonsense explanation on top of something that is, in my opinion, fundamentally miraculous.
Exactly. What's your thoughts on all of this, William? You're very quiet.
Yeah, I'm listening because I find it really interesting. I'm really intrigued by it. I did read that Kubrick was asked, "Why did you not draw the aliens?" And he said, "Well, you don't draw God." That was his quote, and I found that quite fascinating.
Exactly. Precisely.
And going back to the scene where I think they called it the dawn of mankind, where
Yeah.
the apes or the monkeys they learned how to use a weapon. And I kind of, I don't know if and I probably seen it different compared to everyone else, but in my own view they went from this peaceful environment into a war environment. So I viewed it more as not the dawn of mankind, but the end of man being kind, when
Oh,
they start to use weapons, and then it all got a bit more out of hand. So I seen it as a wee bit different from that, but yeah, I
that's
thought that
a
was an interesting quote from Kubrick.
that's a very nice way of putting that, William. I must say, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, again, did God put the thing into the apes, or was it another entity similar but not equal to God? Would God have deliberately put violence into his creation? Could have put the potential for violence in there, but what's depicted is actual violence.
The two apes are intended to be Cain and Abel, more or less.
You reckon so? Yeah, yeah. See, I can see why you would say that.
Yeah,
Uh, Parable. Yeah, why not? You see my point? It's not really a godlike thing, is it? Here's this big
Well,
bone, mate. If you just
yeah,
bash it over somebody, you'll kill them.
but coming back to the specific, the group from which Kubrick is derived,
Yeah.
that group, they regard, they would call anyone who is not within their group the red ones, and they would say that the red ones are inherently evil, inherently bad, inherently violent. So there is the potential for and this is why 2001 can be a little bit of a slippery movie. Depending on the scene, one might be talking about the red ones, but one also might be talking about Kubrick's specific ethnic group. So, depending on the scene, you may be talking about one group or a different group. It's hard to pin down as you're always talking about this group or that group.
Hmm.
Again, because scene per scene, it does seem to change a lot.
Well, Budgie's coming back with uh, a little bit more precise. So he's saying, I don't see it as a weapon when he's got a bone. I see it as a tool. It's the start of using tools, Budgie's suggesting. Now, I can
yeah,
see what he's driving at there as well.
yeah. A tool to kill, because that's what they do. He used it to kill, to eat, and he used it to kill when they got attacked by another tribe of apes.
But that's the way of life, isn't it? Because you're
Yeah,
now drawing a moral judgment on what those apes are doing. You're saying one is acceptable morality because he's using it to eat, but he still has to kill the animal that he's going to then eat. And then, as you say, it's used strictly as a weapon of war. So you're put in a position of
hmm,
deciding about moral positions over the ownership of a bit of bone.
I
yeah,
actually think that this is that was intended by Kubrick. I actually think that drawing the connection between tools and weapons was intentional. Infamously, the famous cut of the bone flying into the air and then descending as a nuclear weapons satellite system, like he's drawing a connection between
Yeah.
abstract concepts used as abstract concepts represented in physical reality as tools, and also those tools as weapons.
Hmm.
And I am of the opinion that comprehension of concepts uh, and representing this comprehension physically as, you know, a hammer or a wrench or whatever, you know, lock this thing down so that you can attach it properly so that it doesn't move around too much. You know, that's a nail or a screw or something like that, or maybe an adhesive. You know, if I make a squiggle in a particular pattern and I do this in repetition, I can convey a concept instead of being a physical tool. That's a mental tool. That's called language, written language. And it is possible to use these tools as things that can harm another person, but that need not be the case. I can,
Okay.
like, a sweater is a tool. It's a tool to keep your body warm. And in the
Hmm.
pure abstract, that's what a sweater is. Eyeglasses are a tool so you can see something more clearly if you don't happen to have the best eyesight. It's just a tool. It doesn't mean that you have to use it as a weapon. Obviously, you can burn ants with it, you know, which is kind of a bad thing to do, so try not to do that. But, you know, it's just a tool.
Sure.
And
Well,
the equivocation of tools with weapons, I believe that was intentional on Kubrick's part.
well, on any level, it's difficult to try and avoid it. Special K here. Good evening. Special K is making these points. You know, competition for resources and the harsh reality of limited resources, i.e., you've got an advantage. As she's saying here, a hammer can build a house or cave your head in. So that may very well be the case then that bone is to represent the dual nature of a tool. It could be useful or it could be brutal. And what you're all saying seems to suggest that that's what was behind that.
So it's the first known use of a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, essentially, William. I'm just saying that if it was God that started everything off, and I would argue that it was, it's hard to imagine that we were started off with evil intents. It's more likely that the tool came first, which again is seen in those ape scenes because the first thing that he does with it is feed himself and his buddies in the tribe. Then it becomes a weapon. Yeah.
I think as well, if when you watch the film, the apes hitting he's smashing up a skeleton,
Ah,
and then it's like something changes in his brain, and he thinks, "Oh, wait a minute, I could use this to smash one of them pigs or whatever
ah,
they are, and cave
ah,
their head in and eat it." If food was scarce at the time, but when you look at some of the scenes, they seem to be, I guess, yeah, there is predators, which is right, but they're also, a lot of them are in harmony and sharing different foods and what have you. And then it seems to take a turn once they realize, oh, actually, I can use this not just as a toy for playing, but I can use it for my benefit in the way of um, helping to feed or helping to protect the tribe.
sure. Scott's Harbour said a lot of movies have subtle biblical language, but when they inject it into a movie or a TV, it usually tells a picture very clear. And I think from the point of view of showing the use of a bone as a tool and as a weapon is very clearly shown in those scenes. It still doesn't answer the question that I think Kubrick's asking. Where does that spark of inspiration come from? Which is to me that is the question that's being asked, but he doesn't answer it. In my view, I don't accept the alien idea because it doesn't
Just for a moment,
satisfy my mind.
I want to come back to something that William was talking about, because it reminds me of a concept that's been on my mind for a while. The secular people, ones who are like Kubrick,
Uh-huh.
they have a tendency to not believe in free will. So you don't have agency, you don't have free will, and whatever crosses your path, you'll make decisions based on what crosses your path. This is similar. I stress similar. It's similar in form to the imparting of knowledge by the monolith. The monkeys were empty vessels, and some form of knowledge was imparted to them, and then they behaved based on that knowledge that was imparted to them. They are fundamentally without free will. That's the way that I view it. That's my honest assessment.
Mm.
And what William is talking about, which by the way is echoed in some sense by Special K on Acid, about this is basically the gun debate in the U.S. Yes, actually, these are all linked, in my opinion. What I mean by that is the 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 monolith imparted the concept of tool to the monkey. The only information that we are given about the monkey and his idea of tool is monkey smash. That's it. At no point do we show a different tool. Again, what is it? Eyeglasses, sweaters,
Mm.
lathes, uh, shoes, things like this,
Sure.
screws and nails. No
Plows.
such similar concept of tool is brought up within that initial scene in 2001 Space Odyssey. The whole thing revolves around Monkey Smash, and then it moves on to the Cain and Abel murder pact. So, this the concept that comes to my mind is whatever the empty vessel is exposed to, the empty vessel will behave almost exclusively based on that exposure to whatever idea or concept or thing. There's a famous cartoon from the 1950s or 60s. It's one of those old Warner Brothers cartoons with Bugs Bunny,
Yeah.
and in the cartoon, there's some kind of a truck full of hats, and the truck crashes, and then hats go flying up into the air, and all the hats, they slowly come down and fall onto the heads of Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. And as they put on different hats, they take on different personality traits, and they
Right.
behave in different ways. And while there is an element of truth to that, you'll note that what do you fundamentally have? You have the same concept of an empty vessel has some kind of thing, knowledge, information, something is imparted to it, transferred to it, in this case by a hat. And then Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny, they take on roles based on whatever is transferred to them. And in the same, I'm rolling over the same concept a lot, only because I do think that this is genuinely important to the mindset of people who make movies such as 2001 Space Odyssey. I genuinely believe that the empty vessel concept and possession is truly important to understand their worldview.
And you think that's what's going on there?
Yes.
Okay. can see that. I can see that.
Now that I prattled on for like 10 minutes, sorry about that.
But it doesn't answer the question of how does the ape go from one, whether it's a tool or a weapon, how does it go from one concept to the other? Is it
Equivocation.
simply the idea that once you have one concept, the second concept becomes easier and the third becomes easier still?
But
Yeah,
those things.
possibly. I'd go with that.
Oh, what's that, William? I'm sorry.
I think John might have a point there because I was thinking through learning and through play, your brain begins to think more and more. And when you look at the ape, he's smashing it up like in a playful way. Then all of a sudden he's a bit like, wait a minute, I can use this as a tool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that how it's done? Is that the idea that Kubrick's played with? As you say, Eki, this idea of an empty vessel, something is put in from wherever, and we have one concept. But how do you move from one to two to three to four, and etc. etc.? And I think possibly that's it. That once you have one concept, um, it's easier then to have the second one, and the third one becomes easier still again. And if you think about anything that you've done in your own life, that you would say, well, I made that, in my old case, I would say something like a song would work that way. The hardest part is that first song. Once you've got that first song, the second song becomes that bit easier, and the third a bit easier still, etc., etc. Uh, which is what I'm suggesting here for the ape and the bone, regardless of which way round it came first. Whether it became the weapon first and then the tool, or the tool then the weapon, doesn't really matter, I don't think.
Okay, so now I'm going to go a little bit into some psychology here. And I'm sorry for being so like woolly headed and weird about this. I can't help it. I've just thought about these concepts a lot for the past couple of years. Um, I do think, okay, so the basic standpoint that a person like Kubrick is going to hold is that we're good and special, everyone else is violent and bad. And so, if the base assumption is that 99% of humanity is violent and bad, then there's, in my opinion, thinking about it from Kubrick's standpoint, there is no leap from having a tool to committing violence. Why? Because the group being talked about is already inherently bad. So if you give them a tool, the only thing that they have is the means to do bad. Or you can look at it a different way. The tool itself is bad. So once you give them a tool, they will simply commit bad, and it's outside of their free will because it's the tool that's bad. Again, coming back to the hat concept, you give a person a tool, any old tool, they will behave based on that tool. So if you give that person a hammer, they're going to hammer things. If you give that person a rake, they're going to rake things. If you give that person a gun, they're going to shoot things. If you give that person a fishing pole, they're going to fish for things. That's the viewpoint. That's the fundamental assumption. Lack of free will, and anything that can be weaponized will be weaponized. So that would be one part of it, and then another part of it is worth mentioning. For reasons that I don't fully understand, the the genome from which Kubrick hails, they have a larger prevalence of NDST3. NDST3 is a specific genetic sequence that predisposes a person to schizophrenia. So, what do we know about schizophrenics? They're paranoid. They're paranoid and they think about violence and death all the time. So, if you've got a person that is predisposed to schizophrenia, they're going to be thinking about things like violence and death all the time. And it's really more projection than anything else. It's not that everyone on the planet is thinking about violence and death, it's that the storyteller is thinking about violence and death, and the storyteller is assuming that everyone else thinks exactly the same that he does. And the storyteller can't quite wrap his head around the idea that not everyone thinks like he does.
Okay, let's move on from the apes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I again,
No, 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 no,
I'm
don't
prattling. I'm sorry. I'm
apologise.
sorry.
It's an interesting conversation. But what I want to ask both of you is, when we get to the moon section, where does the idea come from? Unless I've missed it, where does the idea come from that they're going to be sent to Jupiter? William, what have you got to say about that?
Similar to yourself, I'm not sure why they decided to go down that road, to be honest. Um, Maybe Eki can expand on it a bit more, but just on the ape stuff, I found that fascinating. Everything that you and Eki had to say, I thought it was great. So fair play.
Well, I've got an answer for the Jupiter thing, but I want to hear what Ecky's got to say about it.
I'm confident you already know what I'm going to say. It was originally going to be Saturn. It was not going to be Jupiter. And if anyone knows anything about these topics, it's that Saturn worship is a thing. So what were they talking about? A Genesis tale involving going back to what? The Genesis point, Saturn.
Yeah,
I do know it was originally Saturn, but they changed it because they couldn't quite get the rings correct. They couldn't get them to look realistic because they really did want it to be as realistic as possible. And of course, you had the collaboration with Kubrick, the guy Arthur C. Clarke. They pretty much produced it together. But you've also got the guy Carl Sagan. He was involved as well, and
yeah,
Kubrick went to him and asked about especially drawing aliens in particular. And he said, "Look, you can't draw aliens on the back of what man looks like." So again, they also went with leaving them out, and then Kubrick was quoted saying, "Well, you don't draw God," which I found quite fascinating.
yeah. Yeah, well, there is the old worship of Saturn, of course, which was what I was going to put in here. Should have been Saturn, really. But for some reason or other, it was changed. But I would argue that that would be lost on a general audience, I think. But I'm right, there is no place in the script that says why they're going to that particular planet.
No, I can't recall the connection in the film.
No, it's just announced as a
No,
card.
no. It's in. There's a transmit when they touch the monolith on the moon.
It makes a
It sends
sound.
a transmission to Jupiter, to one of the orbiting moons or something. So that's the impetus. So it's talked about in a single line of dialogue, and I think it happens when the guy is dismantling Hal. Like there's a little transmission in the background where they talk about the mission details or something like that. So like really near the end, over a little monitor uh, in the background, while something more important in the scene, dismantling Hal is more important than the exposition going on in the background. So it's background exposition that talks about why they were on their way to Jupiter, and it's mentioned in passing almost. So
Okay. Okay. Well, I watched this again today for the first time. The last time I watched the film, as I said, is way back on its first general release. So there's quite a difference between that time and this time. Uh, I was not any more impressed with the film today than I was all those years ago when I first saw it. Apart, apart from the construction of the visuals, uh, they are still something special to look at. The visuals, but as a story, as a film with a story in it, uh, I'm just not, I'm just not struck by it. That's all.
There's another thing that I've noticed about movies that are made by Kubrick's ethne, which is that a lot of their movies have a tendency to be descriptive and not active. One of the reasons December's movie was Die Hard 1988, or was it
Yeah.
89? I forget. And one of the reasons that I love Die Hard so much is that it's about a guy who's trying to perform an action. You know where you are at all times in this story. It's about one guy who wants to achieve a goal that's active, that is not descriptive. You're not
Mhm.
talking about, like, okay, so one time there was a thing, and then there's also this other thing, and it was this color, and it has this kind of an impact on this other thing, which also exists. Like that's just a bunch of descriptions, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what 2001: Space Odyssey is. It's a series of descriptions about things, which, yeah, it might be interesting to a person who's into the subject, but not everyone is into like hyper esoteric religious stuff coming from a very specific tribe of people.
Yeah.
So it's hard to get into. I honestly believe that the part of the movie that everyone seems to remember is the last act. That's the one where you've got, I think his name is Bowman. Bowman is battling Hal. That's the closest you have to a story. The first two parts are descriptions of things, they're not actually stories.
No, that's
And
what I would say.
so it's like, okay,
If
you
you're talking,
have.
if you're talking about the part of the movie with Bowman is uh, fighting against Hal, I would say that's the most interesting part.
Yeah.
And for me,
Yeah.
uh, I thought that when I first saw it, remember, and what age would I be there? I would be under 20 when I first saw that. Okay, not much under 20, but I was still under 20. I was hoping that section would have been the whole movie then, how he overcomes that. But it's overcome too easily for my liking. You uh,
Yeah.
and I was rather disappointed that that wasn't the story we were going to get. It was taken up, that idea, of course, in other films, but I thought it was going to be taken up in that one, and sadly wasn't. I don't think I was ready for that film when it first came onto the screen in terms of my own education and knowledge. I wasn't ready for that. I had grown up and watched a multitude of B movies, science fiction B movies, apart from, I suppose, Forbidden Planet, first $1 million film.
Well,
But
to be fair to Kubrick, I'm rolling my eyes as I say that. To be fair to Kubrick, like he's talking about some really abstract, esoteric stuff that is genuinely not for public consumption.
uh,
And the only thing that he did is he put his super esoteric religious movie into a format that was kind of comprehensible to the average viewer. But he's not talking about our mythology. He's not talking about our mindset, our worldview. He's talking about his worldview.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any way that the average European is going to watch that and fully. They might. They will catch that there are interesting motifs and elements. And I will admit, say what you will, I actually kind of like the pacing of certain parts of the movie. Like other parts are just way too drawn out. But yeah, I mean, this is just how it goes. But for example, his movie The Shining, 1980. I love the pacing of that movie. I love the pacing of that movie.
Sure.
Of course, you'll notice that the editor of The Shining, 1980, that was a guy named, I think, Ray Lovejoy, who was a British man. So the pacing is actually not due to Kubrick. It's really more due to some British guy who is doing
Uh,
the pacing for Kubrick.
sure.
So, make of that what you will. But the thing is that, like, yeah, Kubrick, he's not he's not for our sensibilities. He's for his own sensibilities, and the best you can really do as a person who doesn't come from his ethne, who doesn't hold his mentality, the best you can do is sort of like drop in and view it, like from a critical lens and say, oh, this is interesting, oh, that's interesting, or whatever. But it's in my opinion, it's actually kind of alien. So I think that, like, I agree with John on this. Like, it is kind of alien,
Mm,
you know.
yeah.
So like it's interesting. Like I love looking at bugs, or like snakes or insects or just weird things, or like molds or whatever. Like things that are kind of weird and bizarre that are not normal to my everyday life. Where I'm like, oh, that's a strange patch of mushrooms. What's that all about? And that's kind of how I view a Kubrick movie, where it is interesting, but it's kind of alien to my everyday experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've just for me alone, I'm just saying, if I had seen that for the first time, say 10 years later, I would have had a whole different viewpoint on it because I knew so much more. After 10 years of reading particular books, but I like this one here. Well, Mike Z has got a good one as well. The most interesting thing is the use of Velcro. Everything else is just padding. I like that. And Special K, Hal turned his tools into bones. I like
Yep.
that. That's nice.
Hmm.
Uh, and
Great
again,
point.
yeah, it's actually a brilliant point, actually. Uh, so for me, that's where you get a sense of drama, a sense of tension. It's in that whole section. And then I think it's squandered. He deceived Special K again. He deceived the producers all the way, or else the movie would never have been made. Wasn't actually finished to Kubrick's liking. So there you go on that. Don't know enough about the background, to be honest. As I say, it's not a movie that I've taken particular interest in. Uh, it looks like it was a suicide mission. It says Budgie. The humans weren't meant to survive. Hal was really the one to make contact. You may well be right there, Budgie, because they make a
Yep.
big thing of that in the second movie.
I
So
know
you may
the
well. Sorry, William, where you go?
yeah. Do you know the scene where the pen is floating
Yeah.
in the shuttle? They for that I was reading about it. They simply used a transparent plastic screen and a bit of double-sided see-through tape because they couldn't quite get it right, so they went with that. And seemingly, if you watch it closely, you can see the lady pulling it off as she goes to grab it.
All right.
But on the interesting parts of the film, for me, I was probably more gripped with the sort of journey at the beginning with the guy Floyd and speaking to his daughter on what was basically FaceTime, then speaking to the crew, the Russian crew, then I think the council, and referring to, I think they called it an endemic, not a pandemic, or one of them, and they were a bit worried about it but they used a cover story to hide it from the public because they didn't want to tell them about a monolith. So they had a cover story for it, and they referred to the people at home as not being able to take such a shock or a cultural shock. And I found that all quite interesting.
Well, yeah, when you consider how far on in time it's meant to be happening, that even at that late date in human history, we're still not mature enough to be able to take such news. We're still being treated as children by the powers that be, which I object to, of course.
Here,
Special
here.
case is the book is very different. Again, it's Special K and everyone else who's interested. I personally have never read an Arthur Clarke story. Just the way things have worked out in terms of reading material. Just never read any of his. Don't know uh, how well he's thought of. He used to have a big name at one point in the early 60s. He was a big name then,
Yeah,
in the book sections anyway.
yeah.
He was also supposed to be the guy who came up with the idea of satellites spinning around the Earth in a fixed orbit, supposedly. I've heard that quite often. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea.
I think maybe in the Western world, but I think it was a Russian guy that originally came up. I could be wrong.
Yeah, really?
I think so, yeah. But I could be wrong. You might be right, John. It wouldn't be the first time I've been wrong. But I did read as well because I was looking a wee bit more into Kubrick, and I didn't realise how much of a multi take and take, do another take, do another take, do another take, and he was
Oh,
he was
God, yeah.
really bad for it. And one of
Yeah.
the special effects, the head of special effects said that the full length of footage was 200 times the length of the film.
Jesus. Well, I heard that he made Tom Cruise do, what was it? I think it was something like 37 takes of him coming through a door.
To be fair, I would have done that to Tom Cruise as well.
You obviously don't like Tom Cruise.
Not a big fan, we'll go with that.
Oh, can't say I'm either. Special Key is saying one theory is that the movie is mocking the space race and transhumanism. You could read it that way too, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Shelley Duvall was never the same after The Shining. Yeah, my book would never be the same either, I expect.
Yeah, scary film. I think A Clockwork Orange as well was Kubrick. And
Never
if I
seen it.
remember, yeah, it's anytime I watched it once or twice years ago, and I always remember it for the, the classical music. And now I've got another film to connect the classical music to. It seemed to be nothing but music. And when the film started, I kept thinking, is this working? I kept double checking my laptop because it was just a black screen, and I thought, what the heck?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it took a while for me to get into it. I can see why people walked out.
Yeah, there's lots of silence.
Well, that was the overture. I hot take. I actually kind of like the concept of an overture because the overture gets you like it establishes a mood. The only problem is that like Kubrick is trying to establish a mood that is unsettling to most people's sensibilities. So unless you're in a very specific headspace to watch the movie, like that specific overture to the concepts talked about within that movie, like that's going to be off-putting, pure and simple.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do like the idea of an overture, but
I,
like
I did an
I agree.
overture for mine.
What's that?
I did an overture for my Philip.
Yeah, I think they're from the standpoint of like wetting the whistle, getting yourself in the mood, priming the pump or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
You want to have your hors d'oeuvres before you have your main course, and you want the
yeah,
hors d'oeuvres to kind of get you in the mood for what the real meal is going to be.
exactly,
And
exactly.
I think it's a good thing um, if you've got a good meal, but 2001 Space Odyssey is not a good meal for everybody.
Oh no, no. I would still say that's probably true for today as it was yesteryear when it first arrived in the cinema. Not everyone's cup of tea by a long way, simply because of the connections that he's got in there. Well, that's what I would say about it. Is there anything you, William, in the film that you particularly didn't like?
Um, just how long drawn out it was. And so I know some people they don't mind that, but for me it was a bit like, come on, get to some sort of dialogue or something. It was I found that a bit strange, although intriguing as well to an extent. The effects were amazing. To think it was that you'd think it got made yesterday. So I was a lot of mixed views on it for me. To be fair, the what I did like was the use of different technology, and I kept anytime I seen Hal, and when they first said Hal, I thought they said Hell. I was thinking, wait, is it called Hell? And it kept reminding me of the Alexa that we've got today, and basically Hal being the Internet of Things. I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. As I say, it's a forerunner of many things. Uh, and I always like the storylines that involve man battling against the computer. I want man to win, of course, and thankfully most of the time he does. But this, I think it was wasted. I just think it was wasted. I think for me that would have been a much better film.
I did read as well on when he does the guy Floyd, he does a video call with his daughter. It's actually Kubrick's daughter that plays the part, like
Oh,
a
really?
cameo. Yeah, like a cameo role. And what his daughter asks for her birthday for a Bush baby, and
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of people in different reviews and people asking about the film, asking, well, what is a bush baby? And I was wondering if I had to look it up, but I was wondering if you or Eki knew what it was.
I took it to be the Australian animal. It's not an Australian bear by that name.
Yeah, it's like a small primate.
Yeah,
It's more African,
like
I
sort of
think.
koala type thing.
Yeah, with the big eyes.
Uh huh.
But I
Yeah.
wasn't
Well,
sure. I wasn't sure myself. I had to look it up, to be honest.
is that what they were talking about?
I would imagine so. I
Right.
couldn't find anything else that would be called a bush baby, to be fair,
Right.
without being sounding racist.
Right. Well, she could have been asking for a gollywog. That'd be even better.
Possibly, yeah.
Who'd have thought? Gollywog. There you go.
I found the monolith thing really interesting. And when you go back to the apes and the monolith that appeared, I kind of thought, oh, that's basically a marker. And then as time went on, I thought, is it a reference to God himself? I was kind of twixing between that two. but I kind of put it as being a marker for a change in time or an end in a certain time. I was
Or
wondering
the
how you
beginning,
see it.
or as a beginning.
Yeah,
Mike Z says the rebirth of man as from a child to something reborn but controlled was the worst thing for me, he says, but still an excellent film. Now, that's an interesting thought, too, isn't it? The rebirth of man as from a child to something reborn. Interesting.
yeah.
And I think that's, for me, that's where it starts out, but then I think he gets lost along the way. And I think that whole ending with the psychedelic light show is something that was just, for me, it's just kind of tacked on there because the ending that he was obviously hoping for whatever reason, it's not there. It's not made.
Yeah, I think they cut out quite a lot as well because it was deemed to be too long.
Is that
So I think
right?
this, yeah, I think 20 minutes nearly from mostly the end from what I could read. So maybe that played a part in it. But as after about maybe an hour and a half, I began to get a bit lost in it. To be fair,
Yeah. Lost in what sense, William?
in a way that I couldn't really keep up.
Ah, right. Okay. Okay. I don't think you'd be alone in that.
Yeah, and when I when I read the going back to the first screening, the premiere, they counted 241 people walking out.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Goes to show, doesn't it? Even the so called greats can have their detractors.
Yeah, it must have been some. I don't know if Kubrick was there, but I'd imagine he was. He must have been thinking, "Oh no, how much did we spend?" And I did read as well. The original script had a narrator for the film, and I
Is
kept
that
thinking,
right?
I wonder how different it would have been with a
Yeah.
narrator.
Yeah.
I think not having one was maybe a better idea.
I know. No idea. No idea. So, what would you say, Eki? Was there anything in that film that you particularly didn't like?
The lack of a plot surrounding a protagonist that is attempting to achieve a goal and either achieves the goal or doesn't achieve the goal.
Well, there you have it, folks. Exactly what I was saying. We should have stuck with the Hal versus Bowman.
Yes, I have been struggling to think of a phrasing for a couple of years now, and today it occurred to me that all I had to do was go back to Aristotle's Poetics. Aristotle once said that life consists in action, and this was in reference to plot construction in narratives. You need to have people performing activities or whatever it is. And Kubrick and his ilk have a tendency to make, quote, art, end quote, that is descriptive in nature. It is not active in nature. And so I think this is why a lot of it comes off as sort of odd. Like I was watching this movie last night called The Second Civil War. This was produced in 1997 for HBO television. And this movie features a lot of really big names from the 90s. And if you were to watch the movie and look at it, you would recognize literally half the cast because they were all like really big names at the time. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The thing is that the movie Second Civil War, 1997, that movie was descriptive. It was not active. So an event would take place with certain characters, and then a different circumstance would happen involving the same characters, and then still another circumstance or event would take place involving the same characters, but none of them were trying to achieve anything. None of them were really. I mean, there was a little bit of that implied or discussed here and there. Like there's a character that didn't like a particular situation, but he didn't really do anything to change anything. He didn't really perform any real actions or activities. The situation did resolve itself by the end of the movie, but not because of anything that he did. He performed no actions, uh, either in movement toward or in recession from or receding from his overall goal. So just a bunch of events took place and then it resolved itself for reasons. But that wasn't even the entire, like, there were multiple threads and none of it was satisfying in the least. It's just that there's a guy who, within the movie, it was like a governor that was in love with a Mexican woman or something. And then he spends the movie pining after her. And then by the end of the movie, they just get together. And you're like, da 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 da. That's the end.
Yeah.
While there's also a civil war happening in the background. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, none of this is coherent. There's not a story here. It's just a bunch of people doing things. And the concept of civil war is in the background. And that's your movie? Roll credits? That's silly. No actions took place. No one did anything. No one accomplished anything. No one learned anything. And that's what's missing from so many of these movies.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I thought you see that to me. I'm going to go back to the Hal confrontation. To me, why that was abandoned, if it was ever there as a possibility, is the fact to resolve that situation is very difficult. You have to put a lot of thought into how is our poor little human being going to overcome this great big giant all thinking computer. And that requires a lot of thought and a lot of ingenuity on the part of the writer. And I think that's why that idea was abandoned, if it ever existed as a possibility. I
I
have
kind
a
of agree with that.
I have a film in my collection titled "The Fordman Report," and it's that the computer is given all its power, and then it starts dictating to humanity, and it's about how do we get our power back. Now, I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen this film, but that's one of those films that I saw as a teenager in a cinema. Saw it once, and it stuck with me. As I've explained many times on here when we're talking movies, because of that era that I was a young man in, that's what happened. These films came along, they went into cinemas. If you didn't go to see it, then it would go away and you would never see it again, unlike today. So for a film to remain in the mind, it had to be something special. There had to be something about it that would keep it in your mind. That's it. Budgies, those are Colossus, the Foreman project. I tracked it down and I bought it, and it lived up to my memory of it. In fact, so much so that my pal in Glasgow bought a copy. And he had not seen it. He just went on what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah,
Is
that's
that
right. I keep meaning to
is
watch
that
Colossus. Thank you for reminding me.
is
Yes,
it basically, without giving too much away, where the computer or AI turns against humans?
yes, it does.
Yeah.
It, it's set in America. They give it control of the defense grid, with the the rockets and the
Oh
atomic
Jesus.
bombs and all that, right? And then it takes over. It discovers that the Soviets have got one. They've built one as well. But the Yanks don't know that. They only discover that. And what happens is these two supercomputers get together.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Oh dear. It's a great story. But what I discovered when I chased it up is it's part of three novels. It's a trilogy of novels. And apparently they made a second film which I've never seen. But it's well worth it if you want to hunt it down. You'll get it on Amazon. That's where I've
Yeah,
found it.
I've took a note of it because I've heard people talk about it before. So
You
I'm
have?
definitely, yeah. It was actually the guy, he's not about now, but Jim Mars, he talked about it. And I think
Oh,
he could have been similar ages with yourself, and it probably left the same feeling for him.
yeah. Well, that's the way movies were back then, obviously, for those reasons. It came, you watched it, or you didn't go and you missed it, and it was gone forever. You might be lucky, it might be used on television at some point, uh, but not always. And this was one of many films. And a lot of the films that I bought come from that collection. Films that came, made a big impression on me, and then went away. And that's one of them.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, the thing for you, William, because I've heard you talk about it, it is black and white.
I can add colour. I'll add colour myself.
But it's well worth a view. Uh, and you may be surprised at the ending. I don't want to say too much. If you're seriously thinking of getting a hold of it, I won't mention the ending. But the ending is also part of why it stuck with me.
Cool. Yeah, I've written it down. I'll definitely check it out. Cheers,
Yeah,
John.
yeah. You can let me know if you do get a hold of it.
Will do.
I'll be interested to know what you think.
There was what I was going to ask. One of the starting scenes with the apes in 2001. There's a big rock beside them, and it looked like a giant skull to me. I don't know if
Uh-huh.
anybody else thought that, but I couldn't help but think, Jesus, it looks like a giant skull or just
Uh,
a
Look like a big
gigantic
animal
skull.
of some sort.
Yeah, it
Like
was
a water buffalo or something of that nature. Because that's what looks as though you see the animal collapsing down as though it was dead. I think you see
yeah.
that twice. I think that comes from the same sort of family.
I
So I
did
think
read.
that's what it is.
I did read as well. The movie was 5 years in the making,
Good Lord.
so quite a while. And one of the things that stood out for me as well was Hal when he was talking to Floyd. When I think was it after the guy died? I'm unsure, but he's like, oh, when he's maybe going to kill Hal and shut him down. He says, "Do you want a stress pill?" He offers
Yeah,
him a stress pill.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was good. And it was interesting to see Leonard Rossiter in there, big straight faced.
Yeah, there wasn't many jokes in if any, in the film. I don't think.
And no soundtrack. There's no soundtrack to
Interesting.
it,
Yeah,
apart from the classics. The other stuff is all sound, pure sound.
I
He's.
did see.
I'm just going to answer this.
Yeah,
Uh, Someone asked about Senso. He's not with us tonight, unfortunately. He's committed elsewhere, and you won't see him on with Bonnie Ladd, nor will you see him on with what do you call him?
Toffee.
Toffee. Toffee. So he's going to be missing this weekend, my friend.
Yeah, he's spending a bit of time with the family.
Yeah.
After I watched the film as well, I was seeing an interview with Kubrick's daughter, and she said the breathing that you hear was Kubrick. So
Yeah.
now the breathing in the film haunts me.
Great. Yeah. So you've got no real criticisms of the film then, apart from what we've already spoken about, guys.
Yeah,
That's
just
good.
a bit long-winded for me in parts, and the lack of dialogue I found a wee bit unsettling. Um, to be
Well, I
fair,
think your generation would.
yeah,
And I don't mean that as an insult. I just mean that because the way
right,
modern films are presented to the public
yeah,
these days.
I understand.
Whereas some, not very many, but some of the older films, even the colour ones, westerns, you would get long silences where you would only get, say, the winds howling or something, but no human voices speaking. That you will find in other movies, but not very many. And again, if you've seen any amount of theatrical performances, that's part of it. I mean, I've written a few pieces for the stage, and they're filled with long silences. They're they're absolutely powerful silences on a stage. So I've written them in because of it. And if I was making films, I would do the same thing. Silence. So you might not be a big fan of the things that I would make. Or
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's probably something that I'm not used to, but I do understand it as well. It puts a lot on the watcher's mind. It gives them the chance to use their brain a bit more. So maybe that's
yeah,
why I
and
don't
the
like
other,
it.
and if you ever watch a film with that in it, you look at the performer who's been spoken to, and then there's a long silence, right? Watch what he or she does. Yeah, like Stalker. See what happens to that individual, how they play it, because there's a way to play a silence. And some actors are very good at it, and some are not so good. But if you get a combination of a good uh, actor performing a silence well, it's a very, very powerful dramatic tool. Well, there you go. Mike Z saying Big Country is good for that, but still acceptable for younger watchers. Have you seen that one, Big Country, William?
No, silence there as well. I've not seen it. I'll take a note of it.
Well, well, you should take a note of that because I think you would enjoy it. It's got movie stars that you'll know. It's modern, it's in colour, it's a CinemaScope, if I remember correctly, and it's got silences.
Cool. I've got Stalker down as well. I've heard about that, I'm sure. So I've got them. I've got three
We
films.
reviewed it. You should remember it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It rings a bell.
That's why we reviewed it last year.
It was that one really long and plotting Russian film where
That's
like
right.
Yeah.
a bunch of people
Mhm.
go to like a forbidden zone or something.
Yeah, that's right. And there's lots of silences.
Yeah, I remember it now.
Right. You give Big Country a try. You'll find it on. I'm sure you'll find it on YouTube somewhere or BitChute,
Cool.
some of these places. Sure, you will. Again, that's a film I saw in the cinema with a CinemaScope screen. That's an experience. See,
I,
I'm of the opinion, folks, that all modern films worth their salt should be getting made not in 35 millimeter, but in 72 millimeter film, because the film stocks up to it now, and it would blow your mind if you've never seen it. It'll blow your mind if you do see it. I've seen it myself.
one thing I've noticed in the past is that I prefer to watch a movie at the cinema. I seem to get more into it rather than at home. Maybe because I've got 3 kids that are a nightmare.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that. Good evening, Carol. A new name for here. Uh, I think it's back to something that we just took for granted. Is going to the movies as an occasion. There was a time when you took if you were going on a date, you would take a girl on a date and go to the movies. That's what the date would be. But going to the movies was always something special. Unfortunately, these days it's made very expensive to go to the movies. By the time you pay for your ticket and you want a suite, the suites are like very expensive. Ice cream's the same. But leaving that aside, the cost of it, it's the experience of going to the cinema. You're going out. It's an occasion. It's like going to the restaurant, really. Whereas in the house, you're just sticking on the telly and putting on a DVD or a Blu-ray, or perhaps it's on a transmission channel. But it was an event going to the movies. In this town, it used to be Saturday night. If you had gone to the dancing on Friday, you got yourself a lumber and got a date for Saturday night. You were going to be taking the girl to the what do you call it? The movies. That's what was done. That's what was expected.
So was
Never
that
happened.
was that sorry, was that when it was did you call that the matinee?
No, no, matinee is an afternoon performance of a film.
Ah, right, okay.
I saw a lot of matinees because I would just leave work. If there was something on the cinema I wanted to see, I just leave my job and go and watch it in the matinee. That was me.
And would it be would the film be advertised or was it just a random movie that they put on?
No, no, the films were all advertised in the local papers. Some cinemas. Uh, it was brilliant here. There used to be 7 cinemas in this town, and a certain number of them, like the one that I used a lot, was the program was changed 3 times a week. It would be Monday, Tuesday, then it would be changed Wednesday, Thursday, then it would be changed Friday, Saturday. Following week would be a different program. Other cinemas like the Regal, it would be one set of films that would play all week, Monday to Saturday. Uh, but those cinemas were part of chains, and they would get the first uh, run round for a particular movie. Some of the other cinemas would have to wait their turn. A film would have to do the rounds, and then they would get a chance to show it. And those cinema houses would change their program 3 times a week. So you could be out every single night and every afternoon in this town at one point and see different films all the time. It was
So you're saying you had 7. How many have you got now?
one.
Wow.
and it's crap. It's one of these couple of screens, but there's no real soundproofing, so you can hear next door.
Interesting. I guess the DVD kind of put an end to that. Am I
Television
right?
killed it.
Yeah.
Television
Yeah.
was the start, William. Uh, and then it began to. What happened was the license for pubs and clubs was extended, so you could be longer in a pub or in a club. That helped to kill it. It was a death by a thousand cuts, really. And then eventually, videotapes came along, the hiring of videotapes. Then that changed or evolved, should I say, into DVDs. Uh, but they went as well because people then started to buy them.
Yep.
And then now you've got streaming. People don't buy them now unless you're a collector. If you're a collector of movies, if you're a movie buff like myself, uh, it's people like me that buy movies. And having said that, I haven't bought a movie. I could tell you the last time I bought a movie. I get every year my pal from Glasgow buys me as a Christmas present. I usually get 5 DVDs from him, 5 movies that I won't have seen. And that's what goes into my collection these days. I just don't buy them anymore. Because by and large, they don't make the kind of film that I want to see. I'm just fed up with movies that are some guy with a gun and he runs around shooting hundreds of people dead.
Yeah. They don't even tend to make them anymore.
Dude, I
They've
love
also.
movies where there's some guy running around shooting and punching people. That's Die Hard, bro.
Well, there is a bit of a story there. I was thinking of, was it John? What's the character's name? John, somebody or other. That's the kind of film I don't like, and that's what they tend to make.
John Wick?
That's it, John Wick.
Oh yeah.
Wait, there's no story to that. Just an excuse for violence and how many different ways can we kill people? That's it.
And I think they made about 4 of them as well. I
Oh
watched
yeah,
seen the first one. It was all right, but yeah, there was a lot of people getting beaten up and killed, and it's a bit becomes a bit far fetched.
yeah, it does.
Well, there's also like proportional response. Like, okay, so a really bad person killed his dog and he wants to get revenge. Like,
Yeah,
I do get that you want a sort of comeuppance. I understand that.
I get
But
that too.
proportional response, like slaying thousands of people because your puppy was killed, is a bit much.
It seems a bit excessive, does it not?
Yeah.
Does to me. Anyway, folks, I think we've kind of had a good discussion of 2001. I believe it is now Ecky's turn to pick a film. You don't have to do that tonight, of course. And we'll
Geez,
see.
it's going to take me like a couple of days to think of a movie that I want to watch.
Well, there you go. Budgie said the last film I saw in the cinema was the Brian Wilson biography, The Beach Boys, Love and Mercy. The soundtrack was fantastic. It would be if you like their music, Budgie. Yeah, I'm sure it would. Uh, well, thank you very much, Special K. Uh, and as William said, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it so much. I'm hoping to gradually make a return to the live stream soon. We'll see how the old health goes. It's all about that now, folks. So, I will hear from you at some point in the future, not too far away, Eki, and you can let
Yes,
me know.
I don't recall what the list has on it. If
No, I
there,
don't remember either. I need to look it up.
yeah, I think that I think fantasy and westerns are both still up.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So for the moment, that's going to be my focus. I think biopics are up too.
Yes.
Okay.
Sports and documentaries.
Yeah. Think so.
Okay. I'm not much of a
Uh,
documentary guy, so there's no way that I would be able to recommend a good documentary.
how to pick a movie for movie review. There's a documentary. So it's your turn anyway, Eki. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring on the outro music. Get set up for closing off the live stream here. So, Eki, you want to have a few last words?
I guess I'd just say, please remember to floss, and I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of the night and a good sleep. Be well.
Okay. So, we'll remove you from the stream, Eki, my friend. William, would you like to tell everyone how they can hear more of your material, watch more of your
Yeah.
material?
You can catch me at That's Life, but not as we know it. If you're brave enough, I guess. If you're at a loose end, then yeah, why not? But do you know what? This has been great. Honest to God, very interesting, very intriguing. And I did watch one or two reviews on 2001, and it was nothing compared to what we've covered tonight.
All
Honestly,
right.
yeah, lots of food for thought. Great, if I can't say so myself. It's been fantastic. Great information in the chat, and it's been great to see you again, John. And
Oh,
hopefully, hopefully you can get back to streaming again because a lot of people they enjoy it, and we miss you
sure.
and wish you all the best. So thanks again. I'm away.
No, thanks for that.
I'm
Well,
away out to walk the horse.
before you walk the horse, I'll say very quickly, I'm on with Scott's Armour on the 4th.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Excellent. I look forward to that.
Yeah, so am I. I'm going to try and get something of my own up before then, though. So I'll let you go and walk that horse of yours.
Cool. Take care. Thanks again.
You too. So there we go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed it all. Seems as though you have. I know I've enjoyed it here, being part of the chatting class, so to speak. I'll definitely try and get back to live streaming. I'll try and get one up next week. I'm not saying which night it will be. It'll either be Tuesday or Thursday. One of those two. But at the moment, I'm not quite sure which one it'll be. But for the moment, as I always say, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and goodbye. Oh, here is Resisting. DJ, what's this? I'll wait. Let me read this before I put the music on. Resisting. I had intended to ask to meet you over the Christmas period, as my missus lives down your way, but I've had countless issues. Car write off for a time, and umpteen other things. Sorry, John. That is a real pity, DJ. That would have been, I would have liked that. Perhaps sometimes real soon, eh? I just feel like a knob now for not getting in touch sooner. Well, another time, make it soon. Okay. And we'll get something fixed up. And I'll get the music going. All right. But I appreciate your thought, DJ. I really do. And get in touch soon. So until next week sometime, probably Tuesday or Thursday, take care. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and stay safe. So bye for now.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now.
But love's much more,
So much more
than we can know.
than we could ever possibly know.
We are one small glow,
But a very important glow.
in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, have some consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now.
But we're much more,
So much more
than we can know.
than we could ever possibly know.
We are one small glow,
But a very important glow.
in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow, in the eternal flow.
So you all look after yourself, folks. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I'll speak to you real soon. Bye just now.